Temperatures struggling a little bit, 12, 13 at best, but in the sunshine further west, many places up to 16, 17, maybe 18 Celsius in western Scotland. Quite quickly, temperatures dropping away through tomorrow evening, so again turning quite cold as we head into the weekends with largely clear skies and a touch of frost. We are going to see a change for Scotland and Northern Ireland on Saturday. More clouds spilling in here with a little bit of rain, particularly by the afternoon, getting through the central belt to Northern Ireland. Late in the day across northern England, but for most of England and Wales, Saturday is going to be a fine day, dry and fine. And after a chilly start, again, some good spells of sunshine lifting the temperatures in the mid to high teens. Again, it will be a little cooler in parts of the east. But that wet weather coming into the far north later on Saturday is from this area of low pressure, which will sink south and so bring a cloudier day on Sunday for England and Wales, and there will be 1 or 2 showers.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Thursday night, and this is Farage at Large, live from Medway. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage.
Good evening, everybody. It's Farage at Large. We're live here in Rochester. I bet you can't hear a word, but never mind. It's areas like this that will decide who wins the next general election. We'll talk local politics. We'll have the leader of Medway Council on. We'll talk about poverty here in the South East. And we'll be joined on Talking Pints by local celebrities, James and Ola Jordan. But before all of that, let's get the news.
Nigel, thank you. The top story this hour. The first British national named as Scott Sibley has been killed in Ukraine. It's understood he was a British military veteran. A second British national is also missing in country. A Foreign Office spokesperson confirmed both families are currently being supported, and the Foreign Office is urgently seeking further information. More on that when we get it. Meanwhile, 2 large explosions have been heard in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. That comes as the UN Secretary-General met with President Zelensky in the Ukrainian capital. Antonio Guterres also visited the Ukrainian town of Bucha in the Kyiv region and says he's doing everything possible to evacuate people from Mariupol's steel plant in Ukraine.
But the men and women of the United Nations are working every day for the people of Ukraine, side by side with so many brave Ukrainian organizations. They are engaged in an enormously complicated mission under difficult conditions. This is one of the fastest scale-up operations we have ever undertaken, and we are very much aware that not everything is perfect.
Here, the Prime Minister has said the behaviour of an MP caught watching pornography on his phone in the House of Commons would be unacceptable in any workplace. It follows the Labour leader calling for the Conservative Party to take action now. Boris Johnson says the case would need to go through the appropriate complaints channels as his chief whip launches an investigation.
I think it's obviously unacceptable for anybody to be doing that kind of thing in the workplace. It would be the same for any kind of job up and down the country. Let's be absolutely clear about that. What needs to happen now is that the proper procedures need to be gone through. The independent complaints and grievances procedure needs to be activated, and we need to get to understand the facts.
A heroin addict mother has been jailed for 20 years for gross negligence and manslaughter of her 7-year-old son. Hakeem Hussein, who was asthmatic, died after Laura Heath used his inhalers to smoke her crack cocaine. She admitted child cruelty. The little boy's body was found in a garden in Birmingham in 2017, where he died alone after suffering an asthma attack. The Conservative MP Jamie Wallace has been charged with failing to stop after a car crash in November last year. South Wales police say he's also been charged with failing to report a collision, driving without due care and attention, and leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position. Wallace recently came out as trans and revealed in a personal statement that he'd been raped and blackmailed. The MP is due to appear before Magistrates' Court in Cardiff next month. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News, which tonight is in Medway with Farage.
In Rochester, to be precise. It's a wonderful historic place, but it's also politically a very important place. You know, we hear about the Red Wall all the time. The Red Wall in the north will decide who wins or loses the next general election. Well, maybe that's because right now, Kent, with 17 constituencies, has just one Labour MP. That's Rosie Duffield, Canterbury. And that's got more to do, I think, with a lot of students being in Canterbury and voting there. I hope they don't also vote where they come from back at home. But it's only a few years ago when half of the seats in Kent were Labour, and indeed all 3 of the parliamentary constituencies here in Medway were Labour. It's just in the last decade they've been held by the Conservatives. So here, the issues around do we trust the Conservatives, do we still believe in the Conservatives, are going to be absolutely vital. Now, it's not been a particularly great week for the Conservative Party, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk too this evening to the leader of Medway Council and find out what's happening on the ground. I have to say I have a very strong affection for this place. It was in Rochester where a Member of Parliament resigned, stood in a by-election as UKIP and won the seat. We are very much in Brexit country here. But I don't think the Conservative Party can take voters in Rochester and more broadly across Medway for granted. In fact, I'm certain they can't take them for granted. So tonight, I'm asking you the question, the very simple question, do you still trust the Tories? Because in 2019, the country did in a very, very big way. Let me know, please, what you think. Farage@gbnews.uk. And there'll be much else besides over the course of the next hour. But joining me right now, fresh from doing an outdoor show down by Rochester Cathedral, windy and quite cold, is our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Darren, it has been quite a week for the Conservatives. Just remind us of some of the things that have happened.
Well, to be fair, it's not just the Conservatives. I mean, it's been a desperate week for British politics and for Parliament. I mean, you and I have covered politics or been around for a long time. I'm struggling to think of a week quite like it. It started off with Angela Rayner and that story in the Mail on Sunday. cross-leg gate, as it got called, and then the gates just kept coming over and over again. We heard Liam Byrne today, a former cabinet minister under Gordon Brown, who's been suspended from Parliament for 2 days for bullying. We've got Jamie Wallace, a Conservative MP, who's going to be in court next month in Cardiff over that car accident. And then probably the most extraordinary of them all, these allegations from a female Conservative minister and another female Conservative MP, that a colleague, a Conservative MP, was caught watching pornography on their phone in the Commons chamber and at a select committee.
That one, Darren, is extraordinary. Now, I can exclusively reveal who it is. We are going to put the picture up on the screen right now of who's been caught so that you can all see. And for those of you here and listening on the radio, it's a picture of Jacob Rees-Mogg looking at his phone, and it's a woman dressed in full Edwardian robes. But more seriously, there's no doubt, is there, that the Sunday newspapers will reveal the identity of this person?
I don't think that is... You're right. I can't imagine this is going to stay quiet or secret for very long. I think the big thing, Nigel, is what does this say about our politics? You know, these are two political parties with various scandals. Weekend reports last weekend suggesting there are 56 MPs involved in some type of investigation into sexual misconduct. 56. That's right across the Commons. It's not just a Conservative problem, right across Commons. It's led the Attorney-General today to say, and I want to read this quote out to you because I think it's quite powerful. She said, there is, however, a very small minority of men who fall short, and there are some bad apples who are out of order, who behave like animals and are bringing Parliament into disrepute. And I think there are going to be very questions about the culture in Parliament, about the drinking culture, about the very fact that MPs employ their staff directly, and about the HR procedures. But there is no doubt, and it's not just the new intake or the old take, or the old guard, the dinosaurs. I mean, this is right across the board. And it will undermine trust in politics.
And it's here in Kent too, because, of course, we've had a Conservative member of Parliament for Dover.
Indeed, who's in prison.
Charlie Elphing.
Yeah.
Gone to prison. We had Damien Green.
Involving pornography as well.
Who was effectively virtually a Deputy Prime Minister, wasn't he, under Theresa May?
Yeah, there is a very, very long list. And I fear, I think, because we have to remind ourselves there are an awful lot of good MPs out there who work very, very hard. And as the Attorney-General said today, you know, there are some bad apples. And we have to say, mainly men who are bringing politics into disrepute.
But you're quite right. Labour have got their scandals too. But it's parties in government who, and they've been in government now for a long time, they tend to lose elections rather than oppositions winning them. And I just wonder what the impact of this is going to be.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's really difficult to tell. And we've got these local elections, not necessarily here where we are in this part of the country, but elsewhere, across England, Scotland and Wales, this time next week. And Northern Ireland, Assembly elections happening there as well. And we'll be covering that on GBNews. But it's always fascinating to know how much of the national narrative weighs on local elections. Clearly the Conservative Party would like in many ways this to be about local councils. They feel that they run them much better. Boris Johnson talked about Nottingham, he talked about Croydon, who've got involved in scandals and bankruptcy in recent years, and they talk about low council tax and that sort of stuff. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the Conservatives will be judged largely on big national issues, not just Partygate, that of course gets people animated, but also the cost of living crisis, whether that's your petrol pumps, your heating bills, inflation going up, rises in the supermarket, but also this tax increase that has happened with the national insurance this month. A lot of people will have got paid today or tomorrow, and they will notice that there's a lot less money in their pocket. And in the end, we'll have to see how much that weighs down. Will this be a crucial local election for Boris Johnson? You bet it will be. Of course it will, because in the end, he is under political pressure. If he can prove that he's not a winner, a lot of Conservative MPs will be asking, well, what's the point of the Prime Minister?
And it all happens in a week's time.
But it's a test for Keir Starmer too, because Keir Starmer needs to do well in these elections if he's got any chance, any hope of winning the next general election.
Absolutely, Darren, thank you. And like me, Darren McCaffrey's out there. I like Darren so much more now that I work with him, rather than him interviewing me when he worked at Sky News, I have to say. Well, we're out here today doing this event. We've got a room full of people. Darren was down the road outside Rochester Cathedral earlier doing a live show. And we're going to be taking GB News out around the country, meeting real audiences, because this is the people's channel. That is what GB News is here for. Now, they say all politics is local. I wonder. The boss of Medway Council, Alan Jarrett, is here with me. Alan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm very pleased you're here. As we take this show around the country, regardless whether we go to Labour areas or Conservative areas, we find the local MP always keen to come on, the local council leader often keen to come on. Sadly, Kelly Tolhurst decided, the local MP here, that she would not appear. From what I can see, she doesn't do any media at all, which I find quite astonishing. But hey, no doubt people here are thrilled that she's their MP. So that puts you in the hot seat. Alan, one thing I want to talk about that'll be of interest outside Medway, outside Kent, is grammar schools, because they've almost disappeared over much of the country. I think there are 164 grammar schools left in the whole of England and Wales, and yet here you've still got active and I think thriving grammar schools.
Absolutely thriving, you're right, Nigel. In fact, we've just taken through Cabinet agreement to make 3 of our existing grammar schools co-educational, because we were struggling for numbers. So we looked around and bearing in mind we're not allowed to have a new grammar school. So how can we increase our capacity of grammar schools? And we've gone down the co-educational route, which is very popular with the parents, very popular with the children, and very popular with people outside of Medway who try to come in and hoover up any spaces that we've got.
Is there opposition? I mean, clearly when grammar schools were removed, it was Labour that began it, but I think the Conservatives closed more grammar schools in government than the Labour Party did. Is there a big campaign in Medway to stop grammar schools, or do you feel it's got broad support?
I think it's got broad support, and I think it's formed part of our election manifesto every election. We've won the last 7 elections with retention and enhancement of grammar schools as part of that manifesto. So that, amongst other things, seems to be very popular with people. And it's something, Kent and including Medway, one of the last bastions of grammar schools. Yeah. And I always find it quite nauseating, actually, that some of the people that are most vehemently against grammar schools went to grammar school themselves. So they're pulling up the drawbridge after them, you know?
I know, that's absolutely right. Now, cost of living. Massive issue, and you know it's not necessarily your fault at local council level that gas prices are going up and all the rest of it, but clearly increases in poverty in the area. I notice that you're very, very keen as a council, very keen on the climate change agenda and us going net zero by 2050. Do you not think, Alan, that actually, given that this country only produces 1% of global CO2, given that China built 80 new coal-fired power stations last year, that the priority of these people is, I'm going to suggest, I might be wrong, but the priority of these people is they can't pay their bills, not the climate change agenda. And I just wonder, because... And by the way, I'm not suggesting that we be irresponsible. You know, we want to be good guardians of the environment. We want generations that come after us to benefit from that. But you're in line very much with the Conservative Party officially. Do you feel comfortable with that policy right now?
I think being in line with the Conservative policy nationally isn't something that in Medway we necessarily look to do. We look to do what is best for Medway people. Really interested in the reaction just now to what you said about it. We are committed to it because pretty well we have to be. It's how we go about it and how much we spend on it. So I can tell you from budget setting what we spend on climate change is very, very modest indeed. Our priorities in terms of spending for the good people of Medway are very clear, and they don't include spending millions on climate change. There's an absolute necessity to do it. The council is leading the way, but we only produce 1.4% of the carbon across the whole of Medway. So our main challenge is to work with the wider community, including the NHS, of course, and the private sector to get them to step up to the plate and attend to their carbon emissions as well.
NHS, you've mentioned it. You know, I look at cancer waiting times. Medway's doing pretty well. I mean, it's not doing great. No one is, but it's doing pretty well compared to much of the rest of the country. But the gripe that I get, just everywhere I go, is lack of access to GPs, huge waiting times for basic operations. I'm guessing politically for you, running a local council, that must be the biggest challenge you face.
Well, it's quite difficult, actually, to get people to make the distinction, and this is not an excuse, make the distinction between what is the responsibility of national government and what is the responsibility of local government.
Yeah.
So, the NHS is not the responsibility of local government. If it was, I suggest to you, Nigel, it would be run a damn sight better than it is now.
Yeah, no, you're right, and yet local people do, you know, have a go at their councillors. Last question, what's your biggest priority? What are you going to do between now and the next set of elections here in Medway?
What we are doing is continuing with our current agenda, which is grammar schools, which is to retain the lowest council tax in the whole of Kent, which is to build homes in the right places, but at the same time to continue to challenge the government on the way it allocates housing numbers to places.
You're told what to do.
So here, yes. So a letter from the minister which said you can choose how many homes you build, providing you follow the government standard methodology. So if that isn't straight out of doublespeak, straight out of 1984, I don't know what it is.
Well, it's your government, it's your party, but there we are.
You know what they said in the First World War, Nigel, about lions led by donkeys, you know.
Alan Jarrett, it's a great note to end on. Thank you very much indeed for coming on. Now, I mentioned access to GP services, and we've had this all over the country. For 3/4 of a century, people have been used to the idea that you can go and see a GP face-to-face and get a consultation, but that's becoming very much more difficult. Well, add to all of that what Professor Martin Marshall, chairman of the Royal College of GPs, has said overnight. He has said that he wants to end what he describes as corner shop GP practices, by which he means little local GP practices, and he wants to, in future, have surgeries that will be large-scale operations or part of chains of hospitals. He wants to corporatise what a GP is, and I think that's completely wrong, because I think the GP is just about the most important and trusted member of the local community. It's a classic example of those perhaps in London or running big organisations who just don't understand what the needs of folk are. At least that's my take on it. Now, Dr. Julian Spinks, GP Director at Medway Practices Alliance, thank you for joining us and for taking the hot seat.
So nice to get a round of applause for a change.
Yeah, we haven't finished yet.
Oh, OK.
And I say that because my sense of this, and I had a GP on the programme on Monday. She's a GP from East London. She said she's spending the first 50% of her consultations with patients that are frustrated, patients that are angry, patients that ring up or queue up and are told they can have an appointment in 3 weeks' time. And I put it to you that actually that bond of trust, that really important bond of trust that exists between GPs and their patients is beginning to break down. That's what I think.
I hate to say it, I agree with you. I spent the first half of my career saying general practice was the jewel in the crown of the NHS. I'm afraid the crown is starting to tarnish and the jewels are starting to fall out. We really have had problems for years. It predates COVID. We have had falling numbers of GPs, so there aren't enough of us actually to see everybody. And COVID made it even worse. We went through that phase where we were told to lock down, to lock our doors, and people started to think that we were somehow sitting there knitting or whatever, when in reality we were doing our best to try and keep the service going whilst not being allowed to actually see patients face to face. We've moved back towards that, but actually if we saw everybody face to face, we genuinely couldn't see everybody who needed to be, or we couldn't consult with them.
And that's because we don't have enough GPs per capita of population. Is it as simple as that?
It is generally. I mean, we're way below European countries and other parts of the world on the number of GPs per head of population. So we're trying to push people through. On a typical day, I see 30 to 40 patients. In most countries, they feel that beyond 25 is unsafe. And so, you know, if you're wanting to see me when I've done 12 hours consulting, it's rather like I would not go on a plane where a pilot's been flying for 12 hours without a break. And that is what is happening. And, you know, my patients deserve better. And if you ask them, they do like the old-style general practice, the small, friendly practice where I know the patients know me.
So how is it that Professor Martin Marshall, Chairman of the Royal College of GPs, says you're completely wrong, Julian. You must all be closed down and we must industrialise GP practices. What do you think about what he has to say?
I mean, sadly, Alan's done the Lions Led by Donkeys line, but there is...
Well, you could be ruder than that if you wanted it.
I could try. No, the problem actually is that we've almost reached a tipping point. We can't get GPs to stay on in the profession because they burn out. So there's not enough of them and the numbers are going down. The only way you can cope with that sometimes is to look at economies of scale. But I'm a firm believer that you can do economies of scale. That's one of the reasons my federation works the way it does. So you still have individual practices that works with patients the old-fashioned way, but looks at some of the back office stuff where you can make savings. That's one way of doing it. But, you know, we've had 30 years of politicians telling us they don't like small practices, they don't like single-handers, they want to really control everything that we do, whereas we have some flexibility to work with patients the way they want it.
Well, I suggest, Julian, given what you've had to say, which I think the audience here are quite broadly in agreement with, that you shout very loudly indeed. Julian Spinks, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on GBNews. In a moment, we're going to be joined by the Gillingham Street Angels, who are dealing with the cost of living crisis and homelessness at first hand. Back with you in a couple of minutes.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity. That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Here in Medway. I was debating trust in politics and some of your thoughts, some of the viewers' thoughts at home. Colin says, I trust neither party. One viewer says, I stopped trusting the Tories in week 4 of lockdown. Russ says, I don't trust the Tories, but I don't trust Labour either. Maybe the Tories are better. And Linda says, why are you always Tory bashing, Nigel? No, I'm not. I praise them to the heavens when I think they've got things right. Now, My What the Farage moment this week, I just love this. Elon Musk, what a hero Elon Musk is. A defender of free speech. But the other lovely thing about Elon Musk, unlike those liberals who take everything so seriously and want to ban everything, he's got a sense of humour. This morning, Musk tweeted, "Next, I'm buying Coca-Cola to put the cocaine back in." And of course, they're all going posse. They can't bear the fact that he said it. But folks, it's a joke. It's okay. He doesn't really mean it. And the other What the Farage moment, and I knew this would happen, German and Austrian energy firms, having paid billions to Russia since the start of the Ukrainian war, are now opening bank accounts in Switzerland with Gazprom's bank so that they can buy gas from Putin in, you've guessed it, rubles. We talk about sanctions, but actually, in many ways on this economic war, perhaps he can hurt us even more than we can hurt him. Now, the people that are really hurting at the moment in this country are ordinary folk. We've had a problem with homelessness. We've had a problem with poverty before the pandemic, but I suspect it's got a lot worse. I'm very pleased that Neil Charlick of Gillingham Street Angels has come on to join me. Neil, GB News are big supporters of you, big supporters of your organisation, your volunteers and the work that you do. Just explain to us, how much worse in Medway have these problems of homelessness, poverty, hunger become?
I think in the last month, our figures have risen by 25%. So we fed 12,500 people last month. We're quite lucky that homelessness in general, the council have done a very good job. We've got quite a good team of local guys, have been taking a lot of guys off the street. But where we started originally as a homeless charity, that problem's just grown. So where we were looking after street homeless, then people in supported accommodation, we now seem to be feeding a lot of people. People who've got full-time jobs, people who've got good jobs are struggling. They're starting to come to us in kind of crazy numbers.
And that's the difference, Neil, isn't it? That before the problems that you had, people fall on hard times, people got problems, whatever it is, but now you're saying it's working people who simply can't make ends meet.
The problem's getting worse, and the people who have come to us, there's a lot of stigma around going to a soup kitchen as such, at a food bank. It's a 45-minute queue to come to us. So when people come to get food, it's a 45-minute wait to get free food. A lot of people struggle with that. If you spoke to a GP, they're struggling generally with GPs. Mental health's getting worse. So people who turn up to us are finding it very, very difficult. It's quite stressful for the volunteers. I'm very lucky to have a good team of volunteers who go through quite a lot of stress to deal with these people, because they get a lot of stories that are not things you really want to be sharing.
And how many now on your team?
We've got about 80 people now.
Have you really?
So we still need more, with the problems getting bigger and bigger. So to us, volunteers is a huge problem.
And you're relying on charitable donations to keep the whole thing going?
Yeah, no, we try and make ourselves as sustainable as possible. Again, we're very lucky with Medway Council. They've been very supportive of us. The local community have been supportive. Local businesses have been fantastic. I'm a big fan of shop local and do stuff locally, and they've been very good to us, and that keeps us going. But again, we're going to get our costs are rising. It's £350,000 this year just to run a charity to give free food to people.
Well, Neil, I have to say, I know that GB News, you've appeared on many of our programmes before, but I was very keen, as we were here in Medway, that you came on. I just want to say to you and the other 80 folk that do what you do, I think by the autumn of this year, when I suspect energy prices are going to be even worse, you'll be needed even more. And just full marks for what you do. It's fantastic. It really is.
Thank you very much for having me.
OK, it's time for Barrage the Farage, where audience members who have been selected get up to ask their questions. I know their names, I've no idea what their questions are. Let's start with Dan. Dan, what is your question?
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
In light of what's gone on with mobile phones in the chambers of Parliament recently, do you think it's time to ban the use of mobile phones in the chambers itself?
It's a really good question, and if you watch MPs now, they're constantly on their phones. If you go to the Welsh Assembly, they've got laptops up on their desks. I don't want to be a hypocrite about this, because when I sat in the European Parliament, at times I was so bored, without a mobile phone, God knows what I'd have done. That's when they weren't throwing things at me. Do you know what? Realistically, in the modern age, it isn't going to happen. I'm afraid we live in an information technology age. It just isn't going to happen. But I get your point, because the way it should work is you listen to reasoned debate. You listen to argument on both sides, and maybe a good argument can change your point of view. So I get why you asked the question, but you know what? It ain't going to happen. No, afraid not, but thank you. Next up is Lee. Lee Larkfield is next up. Good evening.
Thank you for Brexit.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank Medway.
Because of all the sleaze and the scandal and the lies that are in our current government, do you think it would be better if MPs would have had a real job rather than coming from the elite of Oxbridge and Cambridge?
Yes. Look, I think you need some academics. I think there is room in Parliament for some people who are academics. But when you have academics like Kwasi Kwarteng, who's in charge of energy, who thinks it's better to import natural gas from all over the world than produce our own in this country, provide tens of thousands of well-paid jobs to men and women, then I think you need some people in there with some business experience, with some real-life experience. I wouldn't have a problem if the average age of our MPs went up by 10 or 15 years, but we got more men and women from both parties who'd had jobs in the real world. I agree 100%. Absolutely. I really do. OK, let's go to Linda Vincent.
Oh.
Hi, Linda.
Yeah, good evening, Nigel. I'm a great supporter of you and Brexit, but lately I understand that this government is not doing what they promised on controlling immigration and all the green energy stuff and cost of living. But my question is, if we keep putting this government down, we will end up with a Labour government and maybe a two-party government. And that would be worse, I believe, for this country on controlling immigration and green energy. We would be in a worse state, I feel.
Well,
how do we get through to this government without causing us to score a home goal if Labour get into power?
Well, Linda, the point is that the Brexit voting public, who in the end got sick of Theresa May, and I think, what the Brexit Party did in areas like this, got rid of May, Johnson came in. Controlling our borders was one of the main planks of Brexit. When people see what's happening in the English Channel, they are absolutely enraged by it. We get promise after promise made and no delivery. Yeah. Interestingly, public opinion now trusts Labour on immigration more than the Conservatives.
Wow.
No, but it does. But it does. It seems incredible. Look, all I would say is this. Starmer is not Jeremy Corbyn.
Right.
He is not the extreme left. In fact, actually, in terms of many policies, I doubt his policies would be that much different to Boris Johnson's. Okay. So much as Boris Johnson moved to the social democratic centre. But he won't be able to govern alone, and it will have to be a coalition, I guess, with the SNP and the Liberals. Whether it's better or whether it's worse, you've got your own view.
Yeah.
But the fact is, people voted for a Conservative government. Yeah. It's about time, in terms of their relationship with small business, in terms of keeping Brexit promises, in terms of controlling the borders. It's about time they started fulfilling the promise that got so many to vote for them in 2019. And if they do, I'll be the first to praise them. Okay. All right, thank you. Let us go to Danny. Danny, I love it. Magnificent. Magnificent. You asking a question or singing?
What would you like, Nigel?
A question or two.
Good evening. Quite simple and straightforward. Yep. What are your views on renationalisation of core British industries, such as the energy sector, railways, so on and so forth?
Look, I generally think that when governments own things and run things, they do it quite badly. But I do think selling off strategic resources to Chinese companies or French companies or companies that have no essential national interest in this country and how it's run is a mistake. And I think I supported privatisation, but I think it went too far. And I think to have the Chinese Communist Party involved in building a nuclear power station down in the West Country is absolutely nuts. I'd rather the government did that than the Chinese government. All right, OK. Two more. Let's get Robert. Robert McCann.
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
I know you like to come to these places to talk about local issues, but I feel I must ask your opinion about Putin.
Yep.
I think he's deceived the world with his build-up of all the troops that were supposedly on exercises, and now he's into Ukraine. He cannot be trusted to stick to his word. Why are we even trying to negotiate with him?
Well, look, I thought, I have to say, I thought 10 years ago that Putin was really clever, really smart. I now think he's lost it. I'm not even sure that he's rational now in what he's doing, and that is very, very scary in many ways. We have to be sensible. We have to make sure that there's still a way out for him.
Yes.
And I think to threaten him with the International Criminal Court actually was an error. I think what he's doing is reprehensible, absolutely, in every single way. And the truth is we're not negotiating with him. And I have to say, it amazes me. I promise you this, if Trump was in the White House, I doubt he'd have done any of this, but I'm convinced it needs a Trump or somebody to go and talk to Putin, to fly to Moscow and talk to Putin, to say, look, we want peace. Because at the moment, all I see is an escalation of rhetoric and arms on both sides of this debate. So I actually think we should be trying to talk to him. It may be impossible, but you know what? Churchill once said, jaw is better than war. We need to try a bit harder, in my opinion.
Thank you.
OK, and the last question is Lorraine. Lorraine, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
OK. Do you think that the average working person would be better paid weekly because if you run out of money on Wednesday, you only have to wait a couple of days before you get paid? Whereas if you run out of money on the 15th of the month, you would need to borrow money to survive.
To be honest with you, I'm going to be honest with you, I never thought of that especially. But people did used to get weekly pay packets, didn't they? And they used to get, in fact, going back a few years, they got weekly pay packets in cash, the tax had been deducted, and that was how it worked. Quite honestly, given the digital world that we're in and the way that payments proceed, it would be just as easy for companies to set up weekly payments as it is to set up monthly payments. It wouldn't cost them any more money. And I think, Lorraine, it's a very interesting idea. It's a very... I haven't made my mind up here and now, but it's an interesting idea. I'm going to think about it more, and thank you for putting it.
Okay, thank you.
Now, in a moment, it's the best part of the show. It's the Talking Pints part of the show, and I'm joined by two local celebrities. After the break, James and Ola Jordan. Here they are in action.
Breathe so slowly, ain't too hard to make who needs more than
That's all coming up in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very good, welcome back. It's Talking Pints. James and Ola Jordan, welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome to
Proper local celebs. You've done the blooming lot between you, haven't you? Strictly Come Dancing, Big Brother, Dancing on Ice.
I'm celebrity.
I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. You've done the whole lot. But James, start with you. You're a proper local lad, aren't you?
Proper, yeah. Medway boy through and through. Born in Gillingham, Canada House. Lived in Chatham, in Walderslade, pretty much till I was 15. Lived in Rochester, Strood, St Mary's Island. I've been everywhere. So yeah, proper Medway boy, and proud as well, because they're real people. Real people.
No, I've noticed, absolutely.
Don't mess with them.
And James, no, I'm not going to. And James, you worked here at the Medway Power Station. That was your first proper job, was it?
I wouldn't say it was my first proper job, but my dad was a site manager on the power stations. And obviously it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. I started off as a tea-boy to pay for my dancing, and then went on to be a handyman, but apparently wasn't very handy. So I worked on Medway Power Station, Kings North Power Station, Isle of Grain. I did that for probably about 7 years to pay for our lessons and things like that. Our dancing, really, yeah.
But dancing, a love from a very early age?
I wouldn't say a love from a very early age. I would say I was not necessarily pushed into dancing, but my sister started, and then I kind of was told that I had to go along as well. And there was like 2 boys in the class, and I was like, what is this all about? And then I started realising, as I got older, there were, 2 boys, but about 30 girls. And I was like, oh, this is good. And then the better I got at dancing, the more girls paying interest to you.
Did they?
Yes. And then I met the lovely Ola.
Then you go to Poland.
Then he's gone to Poland and found me.
And that was it. He put you in his suitcase and he brought you back. And you've been married ever since.
Yeah, 22 years I've been here, so moved over to dance with James 22 years ago.
17 she was when she moved here.
Yeah.
She was legal.
So long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
And very quickly, between the two of you, this amazing TV programme arrives on the BBC with Bruce Forsyth comparing it, and suddenly family Saturday night viewing is back where it had been, perhaps in the 70s and the 80s, generations together, watching Strictly Come Dancing, loving Strictly Come Dancing. And you guys, of course, great dancers, but the best ever dancer on Strictly Come Dancing was a former Conservative Member of Parliament for Maidstone, later on a Brexit party over here. Anne Widdecombe was the best. I mean,
you know what? She was actually lovely. I really liked her. I had a bit of a soft spot for her. She didn't know how to take me because I'm quite abrupt sometimes, but she did.
She's pretty abrupt.
She did the tour and everything, so she loved the dancing. I think she got on really well with Anton. Anton was the perfect partner for her.
We had some nice conversations with Anne.
Yeah,
really, so
no, she was.
Now, when you're doing Strictly, I mean, it takes your life over, doesn't it?
It does.
For, what, 4 months?
More. We pretty much start in August, so August, September, October, November, December. 5 months. 5-6 months, yeah. So it's a long time.
Like, kind of, not much time off.
No, and then afterwards you went on the tour, and then you do a pro tour, and then you were doing your own show, so pretty much all year round you were dancing, hence why it wrecks your body, and I've got loads of injuries.
Hence we used to be thin, and
yeah,
now
we used to be thin, and now we just eat a lot more.
But there is, and you know, you were on it for 9 years, you were on it for 10 years, I think. But there is one difference, isn't there, Mr. and Mrs. Jordan, in terms of...
She's won it.
She's won it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you won it.
Thank you.
But as I say. Well,
He's got to come back.
Yeah, I've still got my name on the trophy. It still says Jordan on there.
I won it with his help. I've got to give it to him.
No,
yeah,
she
I
didn't.
did.
But you won it, and that must have been a great feeling.
It has been a great feeling. It's you know, Strictly, it's a massive show, but it's an amazing show. To be part of it for such a long time, it is like a big family, and a lot of hard work goes into it. The celebrities work really hard. The professional work so hard. Yeah, it's an amazing show to be part of. So when are you going to do it?
Yeah. Well.
I think so.
Well, I have been invited on some of the other programmes. I've been invited onto Big Brother.
Right.
I've been invited onto The Jungle.
You should do that. You'd be good on
but
The Jungle.
I haven't done that. But how did you find The Jungle?
Amazing. I loved it.
Did you?
You were just
See, I wouldn't
sleeping
do it,
out under the sky. It was beautiful.
I'm scared
Yeah.
of everything, so I'd be
But
rubbish
you're scared
on
of
that.
the spiders.
Well, you weren't
so-
scared of dancing on ice, were you?
I was actually.
With?
Yeah, I actually was. I was rubbish at the beginning. I was going to Gillingham Ice Rink pretty much every day. But because I'm so competitive, I just wanted to be as good as I could. I was training all the time. But my fear never went. It's so difficult, ice skating.
Plus you're older now, so it hurts when you fall down.
Wow.
It's true.
No, keep going. Keep having a go at it. It's good telly. We love it. No, it really is. I just wonder, though, with all this, suddenly, you know, you guys have appeared on the biggest mass TV programmes in this country.
Yeah.
Here you are, living in Medway, and suddenly, you know, you want to go out and fill the car up, and everybody knows you, and everyone wants to talk to you. How's that level of fame affected your lives?
You know what? Generally, people have been so nice. I mean,
nice.
we were actually living in Hong Kong at the time when we got asked to do it. We did a competition at Blackpool. We did really well in the competition, and we were scouted by someone from the BBC. But we weren't actually living in this country. We'd been living in Hong Kong for about 4 years. And then we moved back from there to do the show.
And yes,
Yeah.
I mean, people are really nice. People always stop us, even now.
It was a little bit annoying at the beginning when people were knocking on your door at home at 9 o'clock at night and asking them to sign their book and things like that. That started to get on my tits a
But
bit.
generally, people were lovely, weren't they?
Yeah, generally
James?
people are lovely.
Yes, yes.
Oh, good, I'm pleased to hear. But you're still pretty active. You're OK Magazine columnists at the moment.
Hello.
Hello, sorry, I apologise. I apologise.
Yeah, it's all about parenting now for
Yeah.
us. We've got a little toddler
Yeah.
running around, keeping us busy, so
Yeah.
we've got a parenting column in Hello
I
Magazine.
mean, what has lockdown done to people's parenting skills?
Yeah, it was very hard, I've got to say. We had Ella 3 weeks before the lockdown, the first lockdown, so we were stuck with a newborn baby at home. We don't know what we're doing with a newborn baby, so
No
it
one
was
came
very
around,
hard that
really.
we didn't
It
have...
was tough. You couldn't even,
Yeah.
you know, ask your friends for their advice. You'd be FaceTiming people and they'd be like, you know,
Well, we
what'd you
don't
do?
know.
And then 2 weeks after that, unfortunately, my dad got diagnosed with, he had a brain tumour. I lost him last year. So we were dealing with that stress as well. It was just, it was a tough time for us, but it was a tough time for so
everyone,
many
yeah.
people. You know, not being able to see your loved ones when they're in hospital. For me, I found it really brutal that I couldn't go and see my dad in hospital.
Yeah.
Devastating.
Did we
you
get
know?
lockdown wrong?
I think that, yeah, I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? They were trying to do the best for the country and they got a lot of things wrong, but could anyone else have done it better? Maybe not,
It's
you know,
hard,
because
isn't
hindsight is so easy to say when someone's done something wrong.
Yeah.
I know. And, of course, coming from Poland,
Yeah.
I'm guessing what's happening in Ukraine, it's pretty close to home, isn't it?
It is very close to home. It's difficult. It's scary. Living next door to the war, it's hard. Like, my mum and dad are here now.
We've actually flown them over.
They're
Because they
here,
were
they're
scared,
staying
yeah.
with me. And, you know, they're in the 70s. They don't want a war. I mean, no one wants a war, but... you know, they're scared. They're not going to just be able to pack the bags and run away when the bomb hits.
And now Putin shut off the gas in Poland.
So it's hard. I think
Yes, he
Polish
has.
people are very scared. They're very scared. So there's a lot of Ukrainian people that came over.
I mean, when you think 3 million or something,
Over
3
3
million
million
people have gone into Ukraine.
They can feel that they're there because a lot of children are in the schools now. My auntie is a teacher. She's got a lot of Ukrainian children there. Yeah, a lot of people there, and not much help from European Union either.
Nothing.
So
They've seen not a penny from the European
So it's difficult,
Union.
it's hard, it's very difficult.
European Union can't help. They're too busy, the Germans, giving Putin all this money for his gas. They haven't-
Exactly.
I mean, it actually caused quite a big rift, doesn't it?
Yes, it
I mean,
has.
in terms of Poland's relationship with Brussels, it's got very, 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 very
Yeah,
tense
people
indeed.
are nervous. My uncle's got a son who is 20. He's worried that he's going to go to the army.
Poland is not a wealthy country, and for them, they didn't even question it. They took in 3 million refugees,
phenomenal.
but
And
they're
they're
not
still
getting any
coming.
help from people that are supposed to be helping them.
Yeah.
And I just think it's terrible.
Now, closer to home, you're engaged with charity now, following your father's death.
Yes.
How's that going?
Yeah, great. I mean, obviously, we did the Full Monty as well, which was for cancer relief, to raise awareness to cancer, and that was an amazing thing to be part of. So, yeah, I mean, whenever we can, we do whatever we can for the charity because it's actually very, very common. I mean, just recently we lost Tom Parker as well, who I knew. He was 32 years old. He had 2 young children. It's a horrible, horrible disease, and if you get a glioblastoma, unfortunately, there's not the medical advancements and research hasn't moved on in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
There's not enough money going into it. It's going into other cancer charities.
So you're trying to help with that?
So, yeah, I
it's
want to
good.
try and push it as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah. And what next, guys? What next?
I don't know. I mean, maybe politician. I like
Wow.
watching I like watching a little bit of the naughty stuff too. I'm joking.
He didn't mean it, folks,
He's
honestly.
not Honor watches it. Honor watches it.
Before Ofcom get us. Well, look, you've obviously had, really exciting careers.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, we've been very lucky, we've been lucky and, I mean, we've worked very hard. Actually, we want to now, our aim is, because the last 2 years have been tough, we are out of shape, both of us, and we want to get...
Speak for yourself.
No, I was actually... Payback. So we want to get back in shape and actually maybe do a few more shows and things.
Good. Well, I think actually, the truth of it is...
You're right.
You didn't really need me here at all, because they could just talk to each other, couldn't they? Please give a big round for James and Owen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. James, thank you very much. Now, if you like Farage at Large and you fancy coming along to one of our events, the next one is going to be in 2 weeks' time. Yep, it's going to be on the 12th of May. It's going to be in Hull, in East Yorkshire. So if you live in Hull, you want to come along to a Farage at Large event, and it's not bad. They seem to be enjoying themselves. So please go to the GB News website and book your tickets. Now, Lauren Austin is from Rochester. She's going to sing us out with Signed, Sealed and Delivered, which is what Boris promised us with the Brexit deal. No.
Oh yeah, baby. Like a fool, I went and stayed too long. Now I'm wondering if your love's still strong. Ooh, baby, here I am, signed, sealed, delivered. I'm yours. And that time I went and said goodbye. But now I'm back and not ashamed to cry. Ooh, baby, here I am, signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. Here I am, baby, ooh, signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. Here I am, baby, ooh, signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. I got a lot of foolish things that I really didn't mean. Hey, yeah. Seen a lot of things in this old world, but when I touched them, they did nothing, girl. Ooh, baby, here I am, signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. Ooh, baby, you set my soul on fire. That's why you're my only desire. Ooh, baby, here I am, signed, sealed, delivered, I'm sealed, delivered, I'm yours. Here I am, baby. Ooh, signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours.
Brilliant. Well done, all of you. So good. Thank you very much. That was great. Well done, both of you. That was brilliant.
Good evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Another dry day for the vast majority tomorrow, probably a bit sunnier for many of us, and as a result, feeling a little warmer as well. This area of high pressure has been controlling our weather for most of this week. There are signs of weather fronts getting closer for the weekend. More on that in a moment, but for the time being, high pressure promising a dry night for the vast majority. Just the small chance of 1 or 2 showers over the Northern Isles and perhaps later in the night across the southeast of England. Certainly eastern parts of England keeping a fair bit of cloud, but for many we'll have largely clear skies. And again, it will be pretty fresh in the morning. Temperatures well down into single figures, and in rural parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, there will be a frost, maybe as low as -2 or -3. So yes, a cold start to Friday, but for quite a few of us it will be a sunny start to what will be a fine spring day. Again, eastern England's mostly staying cloudy, particularly East Anglia and increasingly across the southeast with maybe 1 or 2 showers, but also eastern Scotland seeing some cloud bubbling up and the odd shower here and there. And again, eastern areas, temperatures struggling a little bit, 12, 13 at best, but in the sunshine further west, many places up to 16, 17, maybe 18 Celsius in western Scotland. Quite quickly, temperatures dropping away through tomorrow evening. So again, turning quite cold as we head into the weekends with largely clear skies and a touch of frost. We are going to see a change for Scotland and Northern Ireland on Saturday. More clouds spilling in here with a little bit of rain, particularly by the afternoon, getting through the central belt to Northern Ireland. Late in the day across northern England, but for most of England and Wales, Saturday is going to be a fine day, dry and fine. And after a chilly start, again, some good spells of sunshine lifting the temperatures in the mid to high teens. Again, it will be a little cooler in parts of the east. But that wet weather coming into the far north later on Saturday is from this area of low pressure, which will sink south and so bring a cloudier day on Sunday for England and Wales. And there will be 1 or 2 showers.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio.